Hello, now I'd like to take writing task 1 sample question, and I have taken this from Cambridge 15 test 1. At first we see the introduction of it. The chart below shows the results of a survey about people's coffee and tea buying and drinking habits in 5 Australian cities. And the task itself is summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So there are several things to keep in mind. The first thing that we need to make a summary out of this bar chart. And secondly, we need to report this bar chart. And while reporting, we need to keep in mind that we need to include just the main features and we should make comparisons where relevant. Basically two things, making summary and reporting. And reporting must include main features and comparisons. Now let us look at this bar chart. In this chart, we see in this axis it's about the percentage of people, and in this axis we see different cities in Australia. And they are Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, and Hobart. And here we see different categories. Bought fresh coffee in last 4 weeks is the very first one for every single city. Bought instant coffee in last 4 weeks is the second one for every single city. And went to cafe for coffee or tea in last 4 weeks, that is the last one for every single city. So it sounds very complex to understand, isn't it? What we really need to do, we need to start with the trend and exception of this bar chart. So we will think about the trend and exception of it. The trend here is cafe visits are most popular activity. So people who are going to cafes, cafe visitors is the most popular activity in most of the cases. So another important thing here is instant coffee is more popular than fresh coffee. This group, let me tell you, instant coffee is most popular in most of the cases than the bought fresh coffee. Now let's look at the exception. In the exception, we see that Adelaide shows a unique pattern. This city shows very unique pattern because their distribution of demographic movement for coffee or something like this is very different and unique in compared to the others. So this will help us to make a wonderful summary and reporting because we now got the key information out of this bar chart. Now we will go for our writing. At first, our writing should include the introduction. And in the introduction part, we will just take this introduction and we'll paraphrase it and tell it to our reader. So, in the introduction, we see the bar chart illustrates the percentage of people in 5 Australian cities: Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, and Hobart, who bought fresh coffee, purchased instant coffee, or visited a cafe for coffee or tea in the last 4 weeks. So it's just the same information that we saw in the given introduction. And after the introduction, we'll write the summary part that instruction has said it to us. But instead of terming it as summary, we'll term it as overall. So how can we write the overall part or the summary part? We need to take the key information out of this graph and we need to write it down without adding or without writing any data in here. And thing would be easier if we look at our trend and exception part. So now let us see the trend and exception again. For trends, cafe visits are most popular and instant coffee is more popular than fresh coffee. And for the exception part, Adelaide shows a unique pattern. So I will include these ideas here in the overall part. Now let's see the overall part. Visiting cafes was the most common activity across all cities. Instant coffee was generally more popular than fresh coffee. Additionally, Hobart recorded the highest proportion of cafegoers, while Adelaide showed a relatively balanced preference between instant coffee and cafe visits. Now we'll go for the body paragraphs. There will be two body paragraphs in here. So in the first body paragraph, we will see some key information. Remember that in the reporting part, we will take the main information, but the difference with the summary is in the case of reporting, we need to put the data. Whatever we say, it should be supported with data. And of course, why it is relevant, we need to put comparisons as well. So here it goes. In Sydney and Melbourne, around 60% of people opted to visit cafes, making it the most preferred activity. Furthermore, Brisbane and Hobart displayed similar trends, with both cities having high percentage of cafe visitors, exceeding 60%. Instant coffee purchases in these cities were also relatively high, surpassing fresh coffee consumption by a notable margin. Now we'll see the second body paragraph or the last body paragraph. So in the second body paragraph, we'll say Adelaide exhibited a slightly different trend. You remember we said about Adelaide in the exception part, so we are putting it in here. While cafe visits remained the most popular, the percentage of people buying instant coffee was almost equal, whereas fresh coffee purchases were the lowest among the three categories, and that was approximately 37%. One important thing we must keep in mind that thematically, the two body paragraphs should be separated. In other words, the first body paragraph should be written based on a particular unique idea. On the other hand, the second body paragraph would be based on another unique idea.